welcome to Political Voice. I am Moses Humphrey. Now, first we serve you the latest developments from around the world, all right? Israel's military directed the evacuation on Friday of all of the hundreds of thousands of civilians living in Gaza ahead of a feared Israel ground offensive. Now, the directive came on the heels of what the United Nations said was a warning that they received from Israel to evacuate 1.1 million people living in the north of the Gaza within 24 hours. The Israeli military order, which comes on the seventh day of a war declared by Israel following an unprecedented Hamas incursion and deadly attack, directs residents of Gaza to flee deeper south into the Gaza Strip, a narrow coastal territory. Israel's directive charged that Hamas militants were hiding in tunnels under the city. Taking us to the U.S. now, Congressman Steve Scalise, who Republicans nominated to be the next Speaker of the House of Representatives, has dropped out of the race when the party failed to resolve its divisions, prolonging the leadership crisis in the chamber. Scalise, the number 2 House Republican, had secured his party's nomination to replace ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy, but was still short of the 2017 House votes needed to be elected after several of his fellow Republicans said they would not support him. Finally, North Korea lashed out on Friday at the arrival of a U.S. aircraft carrier battle group in South Korea, calling it a provocation, and again raising the specter of using nuclear weapons to defend itself. Emboldened by its advancing nuclear arsenal, North Korea has increasingly issued threats to use such weapons preemptively, but the North is still outgunned by US and South Korean forces. And experts say it is unlikely to use its nukes first, though it will continue to upgrade those arms without returning to diplomacy for the time being. Interesting times indeed. Well, that'll be it for the global updates as we move to the day's core topics of conversation. All right. Now, first, President Bola Tinubu has been charged by a coalition of civil society organizations and political parties for good governance to strip the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, of his national honor, the Grand Commander of the Order of the Niger, GCON. Now, the coalition on Thursday claimed there is nothing grand about Atiku, who seeks to rubbish the office of the president for partisan reasons. The demand of the coalition came at the time Atiku accused President Tinubu of submitting a forged certificate from Chicago State University, CSU, to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The convener of the coalition, Ene Lilian Ogbole, during a press conference held in Abuja, also charged Nigerians to ignore the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, for dragging the image of Nigeria in the mud. Well, she said stripping Atiku of his national honor would serve as a deterrent to others so that Nigerians can begin to henceforth attach some regard to the office of the president. Okay. Well, these are views of certain individuals. Well, this is Voice of the People, and we look at, voices of people, of course, take people's views. Well, I have with me in the studio Tochukwu Ezukama, a public affairs analyst and an author of many years. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Now, it's interesting. What do you make of this call to strip Atiku Abubakar of the title of the GCON for dragging the nation in the mud, disrespecting the office of the presidency? Do you find the back and forth going on in the courts now as to the legality of the president as disrespecting, and those trying to prove their case in court as disrespecting the presidency?
No, in one form, it's comical. I think there are too many Nigerians out there who have very little to do with themselves and who will pander to anyone in power because of the goodies that will accrue from it. So many of them just come saying things that are humorous, but it serves their purpose. They get something out of it. First of all, I disagree with the way Nigerians give the awards. I think if you're a member of the House or a senator, you automatically get a certain award. If you're the vice president, you're automatically bestowed a certain award, and so on and so forth. In some more sane clime, the awards are given to those who did something outstanding. They don't have to be politicians. They don't have to be successful businessmen. They don't have to be wealthy, but they did something outstanding. I remember when a plane crashed, just as it was taking off from the Washington National Airport, it crashed and fell into, well, first of all, it hit a bridge and then fell into the river, Potomac River. There was a man who stood by and watched people drowning. The man jumped into the river to rescue a certain lady. He was given an award. He was nobody. But seeing people in distress and jumping into the river, risking his life, he got an award. A certain crazy man once opened a fire at the White House, just got out his submachine gun and was shooting at the White House. As he ran out of, as he needed to reload, he needed to remove the empty magazine and put in another one, a bystander tackled him, held him, seized the gun from him before the police came. He got an award for it. And things pedestrian-like. A woman was sick, she fell and was unconscious. The daughter picked up the phone and just indiscriminately dialed numbers. It was happening in Washington, D.C., and the number rang in Chicago. A woman picked up the number, and for like 10 minutes, the small girl did not speak. The woman was patient enough till the girl spoke and said, "My mother is sick. She fell on the floor. I think she's unconscious. She needs some help." And the woman, through his son, from the other phone, called the Washington, D.C. police. They located the particular house, got the unconscious woman, got her treated, revived her. She got an award. So people who did something to help humanity, people who risked their lives for the interest of others, got awards. But in Nigeria, it's about how much money you have, how successful you have been in lying, rigging elections, and getting elected to power. So the awards, to me, I am indifferent about the awards. So if our Atiku retains his GCON, or if he's stripped off of him, it makes no difference to me, because I don't see what Atiku, something striking that Atiku has done to contribute to the benefit for the collective good of Nigerians. So those awards were given for the wrong reasons in the first place. You're not dragging the presidents in the mud by this, by.
Now, before you go on, since we are touching on the issue of awards, is that to say that the awards conferred on certain political ministerial appointees and certain people that are close to the corridors of power during the past administration, you have something against it? Because I know the former president conferred awards on photographers, and didn't they do something to uplift?
If somebody does something striking, a soldier distinguishes himself in battle. Like I've always said, I've always been enthralled by where people make sacrifice, where people are ready to.
So basically, our national awards have been watered down to the point where they don't mean anything.
No. I've always been impressed by where people make sacrifice, when they give it all, not to advance some selfish interest, but for the benefit of others. So when people risk their lives, when people go out of their way to do something extraordinary for the good of for others, then of course they deserve an award. But when you give some awards automatically, I think a vice president automatically gets a certain award. The president automatically gets a certain award. When those awards are automatic, I disagree with them. And when those awards come from influence peddling, because you have the right connections, you have money. Some people that received awards are questionable characters. They have no business getting the award. So if the award is given on merit, merit can be you have distinguished yourself in the academia, you have distinguished yourself in business, industry, somehow, but not just automatic or due to influence peddling. That's what I'm saying.
All right. You were saying something before I
About the
interrupted.
presidency,
Yes.
the woman said we should have hold the president in high esteem. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but that's what he's implying. If the president is to be held in high esteem, the man that occupies that position must also be a man of very high moral fiber. It is not for anybody. There are 200 million Nigerians, so it's the exceptional few. The exceptional few among the exceptional few that can ever be the president. And if the man there is a man you cannot trust with anything, can't trust him, you can't believe his word, you can't trust him, you don't know who he is, then it is the man, the occupant of the office, that is degrading the presidency, not those who are saying, Mr. Man, meet the moral standards, meet the ethical standards. So taking the president to court to make sure, because the election was rigged, and getting the court to rule that this election is rigged is not wrong at all. Like I once said, extremism in pursuit of justice is no vice. Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, our president, is allegedly forged his certificate. It's for him to prove to Nigerians that, no, I did not forge my certificate. My certificate is legitimate. People are questioning his real name. It's for him to tell them, this is my real name. Like Peter Obi said, you have to reintroduce yourself to Nigerians. Nigerians don't even know you. We have a president who we do not know. Mr. Man, who are you? He needs to introduce himself to Nigerians. He needs to tell Nigerians who he is. And all the attempts to get this done is not degrading the office of the presidency.
All right, so now do you think, since it's in the power of the president to confer awards on those he deems deserving, we need to look at what the Constitution says about that, actually. But it's within the powers of the president to confer. Do you think it is within the power of a president to strip one of awards conferred by another a president before him or her?
It's a legal issue, it's a constitutional issue, and I am not a learned gentleman. But speaking from my gumption as an unlearned gentleman, I am saying I am indifferent to the awards, whether it's being confirmed or being stripped of an individual is most irrelevant to me, because
as a deterrent now, as a deterrent to what is termed disrespecting the office of the presidency, and as a deterrent to dragging the nation, in quotes now, dragging the nation in the mud. Should such be
nobody is
considered?
disrespecting the office of the presidency, and nobody is dragging the nation in the mud. Already Nigeria has a bad international reputation. And the way this president came to power and the antecedents of this president are compounding our international image problems. So it would be wonderful, it would go a long way cleaning up our image if we can get this president to really define who he is. If we can get this president to meet some ethical standards, moral standards. So it's the president that is dragging the image of the country in the mud, not those who are saying, Mr. President, you forged your certificate. Mr. President, you rigged the election.
All
And
right. Now, there's a school of thought that uh, playing with this idea as to have come from those close to the presidency, the idea of certain people coming to say, okay, we are people from an organization and this is what we are fighting for. There's a school of thought that says this could be sponsored as a way of, floating the kite, dropping ideas for what the presidency might actually do later.
you keep going back to the
No, I know
awards.
it's for you as a person, but you're here not just as a person, we're also here to inform and educate
Okay. From a person's perspective,
from your
they
perspective.
can separate my person from what I say. All right, then it's it might be flying a kite. Evidently, these individuals were sponsored.
Evidently.
Evidently, they are sponsored. The president is a very rich man, and the Nigerian government has a lot of money that is ready to throw away for trivial issues. And the president is a very image conscious. He tried desperately not desperately so that the university would not release his certificate and his record. So he's quite image conscious. So it's possible they are flying kites. They want to intimidate the opposition, get the opposition, well, you use the word deter the opposition from pursuing this case and even get other individuals who might be interested in discrediting the president, if that's the word, to stay away. I think they are sponsored and they might be testing the waters when they say strip him like Mbaka before what's his name was made governor of Imo State. Uzodimma. What's his Uzodimma's was Hope. Okay. Mbaka pretended as though he was seeing a vision. He wanted him to prepare people's mind for Hope Uzodimma's for the foisting of Hope Uzodimma on the people of Imo State. So Mbaka said Hope is coming to Imo State. There was a way he twisted it around. He sent the message and gave it a coloration of prophecy, but it was all predetermined.
How did you determine that he was predetermined? You don't think that he could have received the anointing to actually
anointing, yeah.
to see and prophesy that?
There's a saying, a German saying, that politics ruins character. Mbaka at first was squeaky clean. He was an epitome or a paragon of spiritual decency. He said what he wanted. He was defiant. His prophecies were on the dot. But once he got into politics, he started ruining his character. I used to like him so much because he talked very blunt. He had no time. He did not pretend. He did not equivocate. And I like people like that. But once he got into politics, he started standards, religious or spiritual standards, and even the quality of his prophecies started dropping. I don't know. I don't think it was a prophecy. The Hope Uzodimma shouldn't be there, if not for they called him Supreme Court governor. It was all predetermined to foist APC on Imo State. So many people believed it wasn't real prophecy, and I think it wasn't real prophecy. But he prepared people's mind for that imposition of Uzodimma on the people of Imo State. So it's possible the sponsored individuals are preparing people's mind for possible stripping of article of his awards, national awards.
All right, now let's veer off a bit. It's interesting that you brought religion into it. There's been the talk about that you said something about politics. There's where you put it. Politics corrupts,
Ruins character.
ruins character. But we've been talking about religious persons coming on board politics to change the narrative. Those who are religious, actively religious, coming into politics to change the narrative, be it clergy, imams, or pastors coming into politics to change the narrative, as they will bring, purported to bring a new lease of life and character to the game as it is played. Do you beg to differ?
I've always believed that men of God should get involved in politics. You see, the thing is that in Christianity, there was century-old attempt to separate church from state, which has been partially successful. We cannot completely separate church from state. But in Islam, there's no separation of church from state. Politics is religion and religion is politics. Okay, so we're talking of Christianity this time. But I've always believed that Christians should get involved in politics, because you cannot be preparing us for the hereafter. That's what pastors told us they were doing. At least older pastors told us about hell and heaven. But the present pastors, he will say, anywhere the heaven will give the reward. But present day pastors realize that the world has its own reward, okay? But at least we are still going to preparing ourselves for heaven. You cannot prepare us for the hereafter without worrying about the moral environment of our present life, because the moral environment of our lives influences us. So that race to heaven is being influenced or even determined by our present state on earth, moral, political environment. So I believe pastors should get involved. But involvement of pastors will not bring anything new. The churches are as corrupt as the pastors are as corrupt as the politicians. I was once an assistant pastor and I was once a pastor. And each time I was confounded, I was frazzled by the level of greed, the level of power struggle, the level of jealousy, the level of insincerity among men of God. Their own politics and their own tussle for power is not in any way better than that of the politicians. But at least the politicians do not pretend about it. We are in this to grab power. The object of politics is power. The men of God pretend about it, but they are not in any way better than the politicians. A man like Oyakhilome, for example, before the elections, said that the man that will win this election is the man whose name is in the Bible. The point was obvious. Peter is in the Bible. Atiku Abubakar is not in the Bible. Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not in the Bible. But then when the man that you said will win the election was rigged out, you were not outraged. You started twisting facts. You got into verbal sophistry. You started using the Bible to cover up your monstrous sophistry. You got into verbal sophistry where you said, oh, you don't have to be perfect for God to use you. This man may have been this or that or that. The election may have come this way or that way, but that doesn't mean it's not approved of God. That's falsehood. So there's falsehood in the church, there's greed in the church, there's power tussle in the church, there's jealousy in the church, just as outside of the church. The churches have not offered us much, and that's why Nigeria remains what it is. How can a country be so religious? Every neighborhood is studded with churches. There's Monday service, Saturday service, Sunday service, Wednesday service. Power is changing hand, victory night, and all that and all that. And the more churches we have, and the more our pastors preach inside the church, on TV, on the radio, at street corners, the worse the society becomes. The more wicked we are, the more violent we are, the more greedy we are, the more insensitive we are. It is because the church leaders are not setting the examples themselves. As the saying goes, an ounce of example is worth more than a ton of precepts. So involvement of churchmen in politics would not make any difference, any positive difference.
All right, now let's look about we know democracy is simply defined as government for the people, by the people, government of the people, for the people, by the people. But we have a system of government where people tend to revere those in authority. Once they attain the position, either through being elected or either through being imposed on the people, whichever one, there is this sudden, we just tend to start to revere them. You don't want to, you go to them with heads bowed. If you want to make requests, you basically put your palms out like you're begging for what ordinarily should be due unto you. And this also involves when dealing with house members of the different houses. How has our culture as Africans affected our pursuit for democracy? Now, I'm bringing this up in light of, a few people thinking contesting a position, contesting the character of a person who is occupying a position is dragging the nation in the mud. In light of this, how has our character, how has our culture?
There's a certain writer once wrote, he said, to mix the politics of democracy with the economics of poverty is a dangerous experiment. Another writer said that the root of bondage is poverty, and the root of poverty is ignorance. So wherever people are ignorant, they will be poor. And wherever people are poor, there will be bondage. So the Nigerian masses, because of their ignorance and poverty, must inevitably be in bondage. So democracy is a wonderful institution, but that has to be adapted to the peculiarities of any given country. In Nigeria, there is poverty and there is opportunism. And the political elite has weaponized the poverty. Ordinarily, you see a senator in Nigeria moving, and he has 5 policemen, and in his entourage, his press secretary, about 10% are following him. Is that deliberate attempt at bigmanism or guyism? So the youth, the elite, the rich, built this aura of extreme importance, extreme reverence, extreme reverence around themselves. And because the poor are poor and ignorant, they have no choice. They have to worship those in authority. They do that because I once told one of my friends, he had an organization called Igbo Think Tank, but he gathered a bunch of people who he didn't want, but didn't allow them to think. So you cannot have a think tank and not think. If you want your association to grow, 2 things move associations forward: money and ideas. The rich will bring you money. The knowledgeable will bring you ideas. And no rich man or no knowledgeable man can be kicked around. If you see any man that is being kicked around by his fellow human being, he's either poor or ignorant. So the Nigerian masses are being kicked around because they are poor and ignorant. And the powers that be wants the system to remain the way it is. Get the masses to worship you, limit their access to knowledge, limit their access to money, train your own children abroad, and let the universities deteriorate. and so that the dynasty will continue. Your children return better educated, broader world, better outlook, more money, more knowledge. They continue to lord it over the rest. So our culture may be a factor, but mostly there is poverty in the land, there is ignorance in the land, and the wealthy and powerful are exploiting it.
Now, interesting that you mentioned this. So how do we correct
Yes.
this now? Because I'm just thinking, money politics that we see being played out, a situation whereby whoever is contesting for the position of presidency or the governorship, the presidency in particular, whoever is contesting for that position in the party automatically is seen as the leader of the party, the head of the party, automatically.
That's political arrangement. That has nothing. It's the difference between
And that when you look at that in line with how much is being paid for party nomination forms, in interest forms, and all of that, it takes the richest or the highest, the one with the most cash, either from friends or whatever, how they, to emerge. So that's automatic encroachment as the leader of the party. How can we fix this, really?
well, paradoxically, I supported the 100 million naira for form.
Nomination of
For
interest.
nomination form.
Okay.
You know why? If you are one of the boys, why are you the leader? If you're just like anybody else, it's the distinguished few that lead. And if you're that distinguished and you want to lead a country of 200 million, you should be able to either buy from those that have faith in you, from their support, or however, raise 100 million naira. Or you are not ready to lead a country like Nigeria. You may be poor, a retired headmaster in the village, but if people respect you and if people think you're the president, you can be a wonderful president. If you announce your candidacy from among all Nigerians, how particularly you do it is a question of detail. But from your supporters, from those that believe in your capabilities, you should be able to raise that amount of money, or you're yet to be for real. So I supported it. But
100 million.
yes, to show interest in leading a country as big, as grand, as diverse, with kind of excessive potentials. Yes.
You supporting this? Do you have it in mind that the fact that one might be a good headmaster and people like them, but the people that like them and want them to, lead may not have the money even when they put it together, because that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But then we see situations whereby people find a way, by hook or by crook, to gather the money so they can sponsor themselves. And then it brings to mind the words of, is it Scarface? The mafia movie character that says, first you make the money, and then you get power, and then you get respect. So we see a situation whereby, don't you think we see a situation whereby people go out of their way because they want the power and the respect that comes with it. They go out of their way, dabble into different things, hook or crook, get the money. And that in itself is killing the image of Nigeria. When we look at individuals who are doing things that cannot be even mentioned to get money so they can attain political positions, knowing fully well that if that is done, they don't even serve at the end of the day.
Yes. If you are a headmaster and all the people that recognize you and think you can be a wonderful president in that your small community, you have not started. You more have done something that got national. We're talking of leadership of a country. And one thing why Nigerians discarded the parliamentary democracy for presidential democracy, there are a number of reasons, but one is that we are looking for national characters. In parliamentary democracy, you elect representatives from different constituencies. And due to the interplay within the parliament, a bigot elected from one provincial outpost can become the prime minister. But maybe he has never traveled before he came to parliament 50 miles outside of his area. So he's the leader of the country, but so narrow-minded, so ignorant of what is happening beyond his locality. And that's not good for a heterogeneous community like Nigeria. So the presidential style, and then he's chosen as prime minister. But the presidential style democracy demands that the whole country vote for you. That was why there was this emphasis is 25% in 2/3 of the state. You have to be a national figure. You must have traveled to different parts of the country, appealed to them, and must have won their acceptance. So that national figure. So if a headmaster who has registered himself as a national figure and Nigerians want him to be their president, don't you think that he can garner 100 million naira for his presidency? He can. So if you're a local champion, we don't want you as our president.
So you support the money politics,
yes.
basically?
Not money politics.
Basically.
A man that can get there must have been a man who has built enough support among Nigerians who can raise that much money for him if he doesn't have it. A man who has been successful in one thing or the other and can raise that money by himself. The hook or crook is an issue of law enforcement. If the law enforcement have allowed crooks to succeed, that's an issue of lawlessness. But there are some very legitimate businessmen out there who are billionaires who can raise 100 million.
All right, and let's go on with another topic now. Our second topic, because of time. Our second topic on the show today: motorists and residents in Abuja, Nigeria's capital city, have started to experience the return of long queues at petrol stations. Now, this was seen in a video posted by ICIR on Wednesday, an internet user, on Wednesday evening, capturing long queues of cars and other road users at different filling stations in the Federal Capital Territory. This comes barely 2 days after the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Miliki Kyari, projected that Nigeria will become a net exporter of petroleum products by 2024.
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That was a spontaneous reaction. Now, speaking at the Pengassin Energy and Labour Summit 2023 in Abuja on Monday, Miliki Kyari agreed that Nigeria, considering its natural endowment, should not be exporting 100% of its crude as it currently is doing. All right. So that spontaneous reaction tells me that you don't even believe you don't even believe that Nigeria will become a net exporter of petroleum by 2024.
No, we may not have been able to fix any of our refineries by 2024, and that we are unable to fix our refineries goes to demonstrate the insincerity of those that lead this country. They all feel comfortable with the refining of our petrol outside and transporting it and talking about landing cost. They are benefiting from it. It doesn't take much to fix a refinery. And there are too many illegitimate refineries in the south. And nobody has come to say that the petrol refined in those refineries are substandard. So an individual can set up a refinery. Don't you believe the Nigerian government can set up refineries, run refineries? So there's so much insincerity, so much fraud in that area. We don't want the refineries to work. And do not be surprised that some of the refineries refining our petrol in foreign countries are owned by Nigerians. So until they come clean on the issue of petrol import and export, will remain in this quagmire. It's a riddle wrapped, it's an enigma wrapped in a riddle. It needs to be deciphered. It needs to be unraveled. But until that is done, we'll be going back, we'll be going forward. There's a cabal that runs this country, an evil oligarchy that dominates this country and benefits immensely from the chaos that pervade our country. Petrol lines will come and go until the problem is solved. Tam David West, I think it was one time a minister for petroleum, once wrote that there is no subsidy in Nigeria. He said that the NNPC earmarks about 400,000 barrels of petroleum a day, daily, for local consumption. And that was what was being refined in our refineries those days and sold within Nigeria. But now that the refineries are not working, this same amount of crude is sent to neighboring countries. I think Ivory Coast, there may be a few other countries around, and to be refined and sent back to us. So what we pay them is the cost of refining. And then we also pay the cost of transportation, going and coming, not landing cost. We don't buy our oil from the US, not from Saudi Arabia. It is our oil that is being refined. We can choose to sell this our oil that is being refined at international market price. We can also choose to give ourselves a discount, and there's no subsidy. It's just refining and transporting. Good luck Jonathan said it, that subsidy thing is one big fraud. Buhari said it in his own way. Buhari was not known for his oratory. I don't remember the exact way he said it, but that it is one big scam. And the scam continues, whether it's the removal or retention of subsidy, it's all one big scam. So it's time Nigerians ask questions, especially this president that is telling us about renewed hope. Our hopes have been dashed repeatedly. Now that he's here to renew our hope, we need something substantial, something tangible from him that will renew this repeatedly dashed hope. So let him come clean, let him tell us what is happening, so that an oil producing country will stop importing fuel. An oil producing country will stop having fuel lines on and off and on. It's very shameful. It's time something is done about it.
All right, so, when you talked about everyone talking about subsidy being a scam, what came to mind was, but Buhari was Minister of the NNPC. He retained the position for himself. Tinubu has not chosen a minister for the NNPCL. Neither has he said he's not the minister, nor has he told us he is the minister. But that position is just lying there now. Don't you think that is contributing to the malaise going on in the oil sector?
Of course, the APC has proven that it's one of the most crooked political parties we've ever known, one of the most corrupt. Buhari came talking about change, about his incorruptibility, and he made an electoral promise to curb corruption. But then corruption soared under Buhari to unprecedented levels. We've never had it that bad. And then Tinubu said, I will continue from where Buhari stopped from, which I think should have bothered, a statement that should have bothered every Nigerian. Because what did Buhari's administration bring us? Economic collapse, corruption, disregard for human lives, violence, and so on and so forth. And Mr. Tinubu is saying, I'm going to reinforce what Buhari did. And so we are in for trouble. I once wrote about the darkness. the threatening darkness that will engulf Nigeria. I don't remember the way I stated it, but nothing spectacular is happening. And retaining the ministry with all that, Buhari at first said he wasn't going to remove subsidy. Then he removed and said he did not remove, it's remaining. He removed again and said he added. We just like Tinubu has removed subsidy, but then he's still paying subsidy, one form or the other.
Oh, but the government has come out to say no, that they're not paying it. You don't believe the government?
Well, I don't believe the government. There's this trust deficit. The average Nigerian does not believe the government. There's an Igbo saying, "Adi ekwela onye eziokwu, adi ekwela onye okwu asị, ọbụna mgbe o kwuru eziokwu." You don't believe a lie even when he tells the truth. Somebody has a history of lying, and one day he told you the truth. Because you have known him as a pathological liar, there's no way you believe his truth. So that's the thing. Nobody believes the Nigerian government.
All right. Now, with the Yuletide comes Hamatan. And also, we've seen over the past few years, we've seen that with the Yuletide also comes fuel scarcity and queues at our filling stations. When do you think this will come to an end? And what can we do differently? Christmas is around the corner. Christmas is around the corner.
Yeah.
And already queues are returning.
There will be increased demand for fuel, and there will be increased opportunity for those that exploit Nigerians to exploit them through fuel and all that. So there must be a change of leadership. That must be then with time attended with a change of value system. Our value system got messed up over the years. And the seed was sown long ago. And the seed germinated and bloomed and blossomed and continues to expand, even bloom more and more. So only a change of leadership and an attendant change of value system will change the Nigerian narrative. But the way it is, everything will remain the same unless there's a mass uprising at a point, which is most unlikely, unless there's a military coup at a point, which is not impossible but unlikely and will be most tragic because it's the military that brought us where we are. If we had allowed the Tafawa Balewas, the M.I. Obaras, Saduana of Sokotos, Obafemi Awolowos to continue from the 60s to now, Nigeria would have been a much better place. Maybe we would have been in the ranks of Malaysia and those mid-level countries, not totally developed, but but not with the quagmire and the stagnation and we are in today. So let the military stay away, no matter how much the civilians are modeling things up. I think that with the right leadership, which will come very soon, because Nigerians are becoming very politically savvy. Like there's been this reawakening of Nigerians. So I think with time they will be able to winnow off bad leaders, sift them out, and get the right leadership.
I like that. That's a good way to, it's good to see that you have hope that Nigeria can get it right. I
am a determined optimist. There's hope in Nigeria. And what we have to know is that many countries of the world that we admire today, and as we want to jackpot to those countries, did not start the way they are today. They had their own trials, their own tribulations, their own terrible experiences, their mistakes, and in moving forward slowly. I believe in evolutional progress, not revolutional. So I believe things will change with time.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Tochukwu Ezukama, political affairs commentator and author. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
You're welcome.
But that's it on Political Voice today. Political Voice will make a return on Monday. I'm Moses Humphrey. Do have yourselves a beautiful day. Bye for now.